Hey guys, Jeremy here with Simple Little Life, and welcome to installment number 24 of Viewers Knives. These are all knives that are made by you guys, the wonderful and incredibly talented viewers of this channel. I'm always amazed to see what you guys are doing. Let's get started. So the very first knives we're going to look at are sent to me from a 17-year-old knife maker from Germany. Melvin, he's been making knives for a while, and he's really taken to folding knives. I really love this one. All those gears and those little parts have been soldered onto those brass scales. And you got to remember that when he makes these folding knives, he actually doesn't have a lathe or a milling machine, and he just figures out how to get it done without those tools. Absolutely impressive. The second friction folder here, you see that bamboo? He actually carved that and engraved that himself, and then soldered that onto these scales. Really impressive work. And then this here was his very first attempt at a hidden tang knife made from a file. Absolutely wonderful work. Melvin, thank you for sending this in. Looks fantastic. Also, I'll put a link to Melvin's Instagram in the description below. Be sure to go check it out. Joshua is a pastor from South Carolina, and he said that he got into knife making as a way to decompress and give himself a creative outlet. And that's very interesting to think about. If you've got a job, say he's a pastor, if you've got a job where you're thinking all the time, you're coming up with ideas and thought, it can be very exhausting. And hobbies where you build stuff, you're still using your mind, you're coming up with stuff, you're figuring it out, but there's something different about it when you can actually think of an idea and then translate that to a physical object. And I agree, what a great outlet, what a great way to just kind of get some relief. Joshua, great looking blades. Thank you for sending these in. Alright, from South Carolina, we're going to head to Sweden. Sonny is a 15-year-old knife maker, and this is the third knife he's made. He did this with some very basic power tools. He had a belt sander, an angle grinder, and a Dremel, and then he also used a lot of hand files as well. The steel he used is O2 tool steel, and he used plum tree for the scales. Really great looking blade, Sonny. Keep up the great work. From Sweden, let's go to Slovenia, and Miha is a 21-year-old knife maker, and he doesn't have a lot of fancy tools and equipment. Everything is done by hand, and some of these projects that he's taken on are really quite challenging. Really great looking work here. All kinds of materials that he's using. Doesn't go into a lot of details about them, but even like this knife here with its scabbard, and just wow, it's absolutely incredible work you're doing here, Miha. Keep it up. This looks really great. So this next knife is from a bit of a mystery person. I couldn't gather any name or information from the email address that it came from, but really, it's a great looking blade. I did give some information about the knife itself though. It is made from 1084 steel, and the black and green paper micarta this person had made themselves. I really like the sheep's foot design. There's some spine work, some file work on the spine there. Really nice looking blade. So whoever it is that made this, you did a great job. Be proud of it. Michael just wanted to share some pictures of recent projects. He's been making knives for about 3 years, and as you can see, he's done lots of different styles, synthetic handles, wood handles, and check out this axe. This is so good. Don't you just want to carry this in your kit? I want this axe. This looks so cool. Also, check out this handle that he made for a toolbox. That's a great idea. Remember, kids, you saw it here first. Michael, this is fantastic work. A lot of really cool ideas in here. Thank you for sharing it with us. Okay, next we're going to check out this knife from Dale, and Dale is a 34-year-old knife maker from northern Idaho. He's been making knives for about 6 months, and this is actually the 6th knife that he's made. He says he's learned pretty much everything he knows about knife making from this channel as well as other channels on YouTube, and that to me is the beauty of this platform, is that you can learn to do so much from videos here on YouTube. The design for the knife came from something that he had seen, and he tried to replicate it, and I think it turned out really nice. I like the gut hook there. The steel he used is 1095, and he also used olive wood for the scales. Now, here's a real kicker. Super bonus points just for having this knife pictured with a gun. I think that looks so cool. Dale, this is a great looking blade. He's also mentioned here in his email he's working on his own 2x72 grinder. It's just finished up now, so I wish you much success using that as well. But this knife, hand tools only, looks really great. Nicely done, Dale. Denver is a 15-year-old knife maker from Brisbane, Australia, and he just wanted to share some of the recent work he's done. This knife here is one that he made for feral pig hunting, kind of a hunting chopper type knife. The steel he used was actually a saw blade that his granddad had given him, and he said it's got very similar properties to O1 tool steel. Now, when you think about that for a minute, a 15-year-old kind of assimilating the different steels and their properties and characteristics and kind of figuring out how they relate to each other, and it's just cool to know that 15-year-old makers are thinking at this level about steels and materials, and so cool. On top of that, he made the paper micarta for this knife, and then recently he's acquired some tools. This is the grinder they use, just a 1x30 belt sander, but he also picked up this little metal lathe, and he actually makes his own lanyard tubes as well as all the pins for his own knives as well. Very cool. And lastly, just want to share this knife here. This is a carbon steel knife. He did an acid wash on the blade, and leopard wood for the scales. Just fantastic work. Denver, keep it up. Really cool to see young people doing such awesome work like this. Buying lathes, just very refreshing. Nicely done, buddy. We're going to head from Australia to Louisiana, and Lance is just getting into knife making, and this is the first knife he's finished, and obviously it's based very much off my last-ditch Necker, and he said his very first knife project was a much larger version. He was trying to forge out of a leaf spring, but it was going so slow and wanted something that could actually be finished a little quicker, so he decided to do this, and I think that was a fairly wise decision. Even with this, he noted that he had no idea how much sanding would be involved and how much time actually goes into making a knife by hand, and I think it turned out really great. Very, very true sentiments. Knife making, it takes time. It's not something that just boom, it happens like that, but the results are well worth it. I think you did a great job here, Lance. I hope this is the first of many knife projects for you, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. All right, we're going to head back to Sweden now, and Linus is a 15-year-old knife maker. This is the very first knife he's tried to make, and I think it turned out really, really great. It looks like a very challenging, quite a ambitious project for your first knife, and you did a really, really great job, Linus. Also, I'll put a link to his Instagram in the description below. Be sure to check it out. Keep up the great work. All right, next up, let's have a drool over this knife. This is a balisong or butterfly knife made by Joe. Joe is from Pennsylvania, and actually he's got a YouTube channel as well. You can see the name there, Zombie Joe 13. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Go check it out. It is a mostly knife making channel, so I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to find his information there very useful as well. And I'll give you one little tip, a little gem you can go search out for that a lot of you guys might be interested in, is he has a video there. It's in a knife maker's tips video where he shows you how you can flare over the eyelets for joining kydex without all the fancy tools that you normally see being used, like the dies and all the arbor press and stuff like that. So be sure to check that out. Send him some love. Joe, this is a great looking knife. Thank you for your YouTube channel, and thank you for sharing your work with us. This next knife comes to us from John, and while he was in between high school and college, he wanted to make a knife. And he says he found so much inspiration on YouTube, and so he actually took a file and he forged the profile of this knife as well as the bevels. And they actually said like this paracord wrap, he got that idea from the running/backpacking knife project that we had done on this channel. But you look at this is such a cool looking blade, and I really like the way he finished it off. He wanted to leave it rough and crude so you could tell that it was forged. And when you look at the shape of that knife, that looks like such a usable blade. So John, keep up the great work. I hope you have a lot more fun making knives in the future, and I wish you much success in college. All right, we have yet another 15-year-old knife maker. Dawson is from Oregon, and he says he's found a lot of inspiration on this channel. And these are just some of the knives that he's made, and he's really gotten into knife making, absolutely loves it. And in fact, actually, when I was doing the 5 knives in 5 days, he did a build along with my sheepsfoot EDC, and you can see a very, very close resemblance. What a fantastic job you did there, Dawson. That looks a lot like the knives that I make. Really great work. And he's also experimenting with folding knives here, so that is so cool to see. Dawson, I appreciate your wonderful email. Keep making knives and keep having fun with it. Let's head to Germany now, and Sebastian's been making knives for a few years. Most of the knives he makes are just for his friends or for himself. This one he made was from O2 tool steel, and for the scales he used stabilized poplar burl as well as Zero Coat and micarta. Great looking little EDC blade. He does mostly small EDC blades and like little fixed blades. This looks absolutely fantastic. Sebastian, thank you for sharing it with us. Okay, let's head from Germany to Switzerland. We're going to look at some knives from Roman, and he's been making knives for about 2 years. He's a student, he's going to school. He's also got a YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. One thing I really like what he said in his email is that when he first started making knives, he would put 20 to 30 hours into each blade, and instead of selling it for too cheap and not valuing his time at all, he would just keep them. And I think that's one thing a lot of people, if you've never made a knife by hand before, I think that's something a lot of people will miss. They don't understand where the price comes from of a handmade knife. And those of us who do make knives by hand, who have tried making knives by hand, we kind of understand that there is a huge time that goes into making a knife. It's not by any stretch I'm going to retire much earlier if I just make knives and sell them for a lot of money. I mean, really, you have to sell them for money for it to even be worth the time it takes to make them. So very great sentiments there. You're on the right track, and just fantastic blades here. Again, a link to his channel is in the description below. Be sure to check it out. Okay, here's the very first knife that Mario has ever made, and he just said in his email that the stuff that I've shared on this channel has helped him out so much. So Mario, I really appreciate that. That is such a cool and a humbling thing to hear at the same time. I think this knife looks fantastic. I love your choice in scale material there, and what a great job. I hope you continue to have a lot of fun knife making, and I thank you so much for sharing this with us. Next up, we're going to go to Mike, and he's a 43-year-old knife maker from Prince George, BC. He's been making knives since 2015, and he's recently forged his very first steel, and he made this small camping bird and trout knife with it. I think this looks really, really awesome. This is 14 layers of 1084 and 15N20 with a twist. He used Indian rosewood scales and brass pins. This is such a nice looking knife. Just so much work goes into something like this. Also, he shares some of the other knives that he makes. He's really into doing Viking aged recreations. I mean, you look at the detail and the exquisiteness, even on these sheaths with all that the decorative metal work and the brass. Just so much work goes into that. Such great knives go into those sheaths. Very nicely done, Mike. This is really cool work, and I thank you for sharing it with us. Also, I'll put a link to his Facebook page as well as his Instagram in the description below. The next knives we're going to look at are sent to me from Michael as well, but this is a Michael from Denmark, and he's been making knives for a few years. He says he's a huge fan of this channel. It's been a big inspiration, so thank you for that, Michael. I really, really do appreciate it. And I really like his classic Scandinavian style to the blades that he makes. He uses a lot of wood spacers, a lot of wood handle material, brass spacers, you know, zebra wood, wenge, all kinds of different stuff, and these just look really, really fantastic. Also, I'll put a link to his Instagram as well as his Facebook in the description below. Be sure to go check him out. Liam is a 32-year-old knife maker, and I would actually dub him to be a weapons recreationist because a lot of these tools that he's making, they're more than just knives. They look like really great recreations of historical weapons. Liam's actually in the Royal Air Force, so he does not have a lot of time to do this. It's a real serious hobby for him, but then also with his tooling, he had mentioned that the grinder that he uses is a 1x30. When you consider that, you know, kind of squeezing this stuff in whenever you can and not having all the latest and greatest tooling, making tools, knives and weapons like this, and even attempting them in the first place is impressive, but to get results like this, very nicely done. Liam, great work here. Thank you for this wonderful email, and I thank you for sharing these with us. And the very last knife we'll look at in this edition of Viewers Knives is sent to me from Wes, and he is from Mississippi. This is a little knife that he had made from 1/8 inch thick 01 tool steel. The handle material he used is bow coat with green liners and brass pins. I think this is a great looking blade. This is one of those little knives that you just want to hold in your hand because you know it's going to feel just right. Great looking blade here, Wes. Thank you so much for a wonderful email. I really do appreciate it. Well guys, thank you so much to everybody who sends pictures of your knives in. I really appreciate it. It is so cool to see what you guys are doing, hear the stories behind them, and just sit back and enjoy this community that we are all a part of. If you'd like to have your knife featured on this channel, just email me, jeremy@homesteadknives.com. We will get it featured. And then as a point of reference, the knives featured in this video, they were actually sent to me late September, beginning of October 2017. So just so you know, we've got a fairly large backlog. I know there's a lot of you guys waiting for your knives to be featured, but trust me, every email that I do receive, I put it in the queue and I organize it by my email, and we're featuring it in the order that I receive them. So thank you guys, keep them coming. Really enjoy doing this. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and I thank you so much for watching. Cheers.